because the Global Nominations Committee says that I need to record it. So, please remain muted except when you have been invited to speak. Any candidates who are on the call who are running for multiple offices will only be able to speak for 1 3-minute period. The 3-minute time period will be strictly enforced. I'll give a 1-minute warning and then I will mute you when your time is up. And then the last question will be taken at 10 minutes before meetings end. This is particularly to be respectful of our Asia Pacific attendees. So, the next thing on the agenda is to introduce the Dpca voting reps from Switzerland. Let's see, is Eric here yet? There's too many people. I don't see Eric yet. But so there is Eric Burns, our newly elected chair. There's me, vice chair on my first full term. We have Jasmine, who is one of our media spokespeople and is working on our diversity and inclusion initiative. Vivian Vidal, who is the Basel chapter secretary also, and Zachary Bailey, who is the Zurich chapter chair. So candidates for chair will be up first, and we will go in alphabetical order. So that would put Angela Fobbs as our first speaker.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, then I'll begin. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Angela Fobbs. I live in England.
I'm ready to do that. Do whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Could someone please mute? Thank you. Sorry about that. I live in Ingelheim am Rhein, Germany, and I vote in Florida. I joined Democrats Abroad in the fall of 2016, and I've been an active member of my local Democrats Abroad Germany chapter. I'm a member of our Germany National ExCom since 2017, and I've served as communications coordinator for 2 terms from March 2017 to 2021. I'm also a DCPA member and the chair and founding member of the Global Black Caucus. I collaborate with many of the global groups and country committees on a regular basis. I'm committed to working for unconditional equality for all people, saving our civilization by fighting to get governments and people of the earth to act against climate change, happy Earth Day, by the way, and ridding the world of all the conservative policies and practices that keep humanity from making progress. Professionally, I have over 2 decades of experience in information technology and project management in both the private and public sector. I worked for the Department of Defense for 10 years. My last position was as the Enterprise Networks branch chief, where I had 25 direct reports and managed a procurement budget of more than $250 million a year. I was also responsible for all the Army's voice, video, and data projects in Europe. Due to the nature of defense projects being classified, I can't tell you much about my work with the Army. However, one project which I can talk about is near and dear to my heart during my tenure at the DoD. For 6 years, I managed a global project for the Department of Defense education activity in Europe.
1 minute.
That live streamed the high school graduations of children of deployed military personnel in all branches of the service around the world. During that time in the early 2000s, live streaming was something new. It's quite ubiquitous now, but at the time it was cutting edge. My vision is to make Democrats Abroad an organization that makes space for and values everyone for its contribution as we help save our democracy and act as a catalyst for progressive change in America. I'm running for chair to build on what we've developed and continue to expand our GOT outreach and increase our influence in the Democratic Party that will help us win more U.S. elections at all levels. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Angela. The next person to speak will be Candace Kerriston.
Thank you, Liz. And hi, everyone. My name is Candace Karistan. I'm a Pennsylvania voter based in Munich, Germany. Outside of DA, I work as a PhD researcher in political science at the University of Bonn. Well, I could talk about that all day. I am here rather to tell you about my journey with Democrats Abroad, demonstrate why I'm the most qualified leader for our organization in this moment, and discuss how we together can build on a strong foundation from 2020 to win again in 2022. Before we dive in, I do want to thank Democrats Abroad Switzerland for organizing this event. It's really important for us to have such platforms to come together and discuss our organization and the path ahead. And I think that this event itself is actually the perfect starting point to describe why I am running for Democrats Abroad International Chair. It embodies elements of education, conversation, and camaraderie, all of which I believe allow us to excel. The next international chair will be responsible for setting the tone, working environment, and priorities within our organization, which will of course largely determine how well we are able to get out the overseas vote. As a preview to what you could expect with me at the helm, I'd now like to talk about the tone, working environment, and priorities that I have set over my over 5 years of experience in formal leadership with Democrats Abroad, as well as concretely what my leadership style has delivered. I first found Democrats Abroad Germany in 2015. I was excited by the upcoming election, I must admit, for the Sanders campaign, and I wanted to figure out what I could do from afar. My first responsibility was to get a group, or precinct as we call them here in Germany, started in the Cologne-Bonn area of Germany, where I was doing my master's studies. Technically, Democrats Abroad Germany was there on paper, but in real life, it was a little different. There wasn't any formal community, activism, or outreach happening. And my real task was to take that then from a small group of people to today, a chapter of over 850 members. That experience particularly showed me which structures were working with Democrats Abroad, which ones weren't working, which ones could be improved. And there were two particular things that stuck out. One was our need to improve our understandability as an organization and our accessibility as an organization. You may have had people come and say, well, I get your newsletters, but I don't really know what this is about. And I really think that we need to tackle that as an organization. The third buzzword here is cohesion. It's why I ran for Germany chair. I really wanted us to be working cohesively so that we could be the most effective and impactful organization. We needed a coordinated plan. This approach allowed us to take back the White House and Senate and yielded the best results that our country has ever seen. You can take a look at those more closely on my website, candaceforchair.com, specifically under the Success in Numbers section. This energy and success has inspired me to share this vision now globally. As I wrote in my candidate statement, there's a lot of good things happening in DA, but too many are happening in isolation. Improving this starts with who we elect to the topmost level of our organization. I can promise you the same focused, results-driven leadership as we move towards 2022, and I'd appreciate your vote for DA International Chair.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you. And our last candidate for chair is Ada Shen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, DA Switzerland, and thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ada Shen. I'm the outgoing chair of France, and before that, I organized China for 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, primarily just on the strengths of doing voter registration, probably like many of you. Nevertheless, I was not allowed actually to create a country committee at that time immediately. And so I went to all the global and regional meetings I could, but without a vote. I sat in the back of the room for a decade until finally China became a country committee. But you could not keep me out of this weird and wacky club that we call Democrats Abroad. I have spent a lot more time on the outside looking in than as chair of one of the largest country committees in the organization. I have organized in two different, very different contexts, and I have seen how country committees have a lot of latent power and ability that I believe is going unaddressed and untapped. Professionally, I've worked in film production, emergency response and disaster relief, and currently, most recently, I've worked for environmental NGOs working on sustainable city policy. I've had the luxury in my life to do a lot of interesting things. But what I'm here today to tell you is that the world is on fire and we are out of time. We already know what 22 and 2024 will be. The Trump years were terrible and we killed the ogre under the troll and under the bridge, and that's great. But we did not get a break on climate. Climate is now a 4-alarm fire. It is absolutely critical. All of these issues are critical. Everything is important. And Democrats, we cannot go back to sleep again. We know that in 2022, every race is going to matter. And we are the only state party that runs every race.
1 minute.
No longer is Democrats Abroad an outpost centered in Europe. We are now 200,000 members around the world, many of them activists answering our call to take action. Are we doing enough to keep them with us? We cannot wait for the DNC to tell us what to do. We must develop our political power as an organization. If I am elected, my vision is a Democrats Abroad that works for all. We make the big tent bigger, and we do that not only with voter registration, voter protection, all awesome, all fantastic, absolutely, but we must do more. To keep voters with us, we do that with political engagement. I will launch a political engagement team that will take all of the different actions, that will make them coherent, that will make them up to date / take action. We will launch around the world a mechanism, a model that every country committee, every chapter, every caucus, 3 people in a room in Bern can do a political power hour event where at every regular interval, they are making calls to Congress, they are taking action, they're learning how to do the activism that matters.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Okay, so thank you. Those were our candidates for chair who are present today. So we will now be moving on to candidates for vice chair. These are all of the names of all the candidates, but of those who RSVP'd, we only have 4. So we are going to start with Fareed, formerly of DA Switzerland, but he has left us and is going to Japan gradually. So Fareed.
Thanks, Liz. And how appropriate for you to be the one introducing me. So I moved abroad in 2017 as one of those unfortunate refugees from the US when the last election happened. I arrived in Switzerland in December of 2017, and Liz is the one who got me initially plugged into the volunteer activities I could do with Democrats Abroad. I came at this a little bit differently. I've been involved in Democratic parties for state parties for a long time. I spent the prior 6 years in leadership roles in the California Democratic Party, principally on the platform committee. And before that, I worked professionally in progressive politics for organizations like ACORN and various US Senate offices and campaigns, federal campaigns. But I really felt a renewed urge to become as involved as I could with the party after what happened in 2016, of course. So I started on the chapter level. I started as vice chair of the Geneva chapter and helped and learned what was happening on the ground there. I found myself most enthralled actually with the very vibrant book club that Geneva has, along with just the monthly hangouts at a local bar. And it made me think that, and made me realize that political activism from afar is really, I think, contingent for a lot of people on being able to influence policies back home. And so I wanted to expand this activism globally. I became co-chair of the platform committee with Aaron, who's also running for vice chair. And fortunately, I'm really proud of the work that we did there, listening to Democrats Abroad all across the world, and coming up with a new, incrementally improved, I would say, to help make it a more digestible document, one that hopefully people can use for their activism.
1 minute.
But as it so goes, unfortunately, platforms can be quickly forgotten, and especially when they're not touching on events of issues today. So I believe the vice chair should have a role in pushing new major initiatives. And the major initiative I'd like to push if elected is I would like to make a more continual year-round platform/resolutions process that enables Democrats Abroad to determine what they feel on any given issue at the given moment so that we can make our political weight felt back home. That's what I'd like to do. I think I have the political experience and professional experience in managing organizations and creating startups, which is my professional background outside of politics, to help make this happen. And I hope for your vote. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Fareed. Our next speaker is going to be Aaron Cruz.
Hi, DA Switzerland. Very happy to be on this call. Thank you very much for putting on this event, and a happy Earth Day to all of you. There's another Earth Day event right after this, just by the way, that I hope people come and join. I grew up in a Republican household, a very strong Republican household in Iowa, and the growth of my involvement with Democrats abroad over the last 5 years has always been a source of confusion for my parents. Whenever I renew my voter registration, my mother crosses off Democrat on the card and writes in independent, just because she can't tolerate the idea that her son is a Democrat. So while the politics may not have stuck, a different lesson that my father taught me is the main reason why I am so quick to say yes to the responsibilities and challenges of organizing with DA. As he would always remind me every time I promised him I'd do my chores after my video games, he would say, actions speak louder than words. As vice chair, I promise to continue to say yes to the challenges our organization faces, and yes to the work that must be done to address them, because actions speak louder than words. Some of the actions I'm proud of with Democrats abroad include serving as the first chair of DA China, which is actually where I met Ada Shen, who had already been organizing there for over a decade, and is a big part of the reason why I have endorsed her for the position of global chair. I've also served once on the bylaws committee and once as the chair of the bylaws committee. Some of you may recall Ada and myself wearing some wigs along with the rest of the bylaws committee to make that be a little bit more lighthearted while we were discussing some heavy changes to the charter. I've also served on the nominations and elections committee for the global elections last year and have helped all around DA with a variety of things. But perhaps what I am most proud of in my experience of DA is the work that I did on the 2020 platform committee, especially the design, deployment, and data analysis of a survey that went to our entire membership. My academic background and professional background is in survey design and political polling. I did my master's degree in doing evaluations of political opinions, so I have a lot of experience with this. That technique had not been used before for the platform committee. The results, I think, speak for themselves. We had more than 5,000 comments and participation from DA members in more than 50 countries. Along with Fareed as the co-chair and the entire platform committee team, I'm very, very proud of that document and the way we're able to make that process more inclusive and open. I believe that a strong candidate for vice chair has deep familiarity with our organization, both horizontally across global teams and vertically across local, regional, and global organizing efforts. Without those qualities, it can be difficult for a vice chair to effectively operate as a force multiplier for the chair. I hope that you all, as Dpca voting representatives, select a vice chair and chair that are well positioned to help your organizing efforts. And I hope that you'll find me to be a high energy and experienced candidate for the vice chair role. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next speaker is David Moostra. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
No, you did great. Yes, hi everyone. My name is David Moostra. Give you a little bit of background about myself, since new to meeting many of you. I have my doctorate in pharmacology and toxicology, but have worked for several decades now in government. I first became involved in U.S. government in Washington, D.C. in 2003 when I joined the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Also as a Senate Legislative Fellow in 07-08 for Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. In 2014 is when I first left the U.S. And I joined Peace Corps Response and was contributing to policy development programs in the Federated States of Micronesia, and also worked with the WHO throughout the Western Pacific Islands. During that process, I actually ended up coming across an opportunity in Ukraine and moved from Yap to Kyiv in 2015 and have been here since. While here, I was implementing one of the biological threat reduction programs on behalf of the U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and really focused a lot on building scientific diplomacy and addressing misinformation campaigns and disinformation propaganda. It's something that's really become of interest to me and I think is really relevant to our organization and to even the political environment in the US currently. I know one of the processes I did through that was create one of the first international conferences that brought more than 700 scientists and government officials to Ukraine to really kind of address and build communication and link the Ukrainian community to international experts and outsiders. I think that's really kind of a key concept that's important even for Democrats abroad. And I really think my diplomatic approach to communication and messaging is a key skill for a vice chair. Really trying to appeal to a broad constituency and promote embracing Democratic Party candidates, but at the same time avoiding contributing to the growing partisan divide and internal divides that continue to grow within the US voter base, both within the US, continental US and abroad. So I'd really like to assist with returning to a party that supports good statesmen and not simply media personalities, and building some of the voter outreach and education programs that really need to take place so that we're making smart and informed decisions. Unfortunately, it's something that the public has really moved away from, especially with the way news is now transmitted and the lack of informed content that often comes along with the meme-based communications. So those are really some of my priorities and key interest areas and things that I think I could contribute as a professional to Democrats abroad and the leadership committee.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
And our final vice chair candidate today is Art Shankler.
Hi, thanks, Liz, and thanks to everybody who's set up this call and everybody who's joined us. I'm Art Shankler. I live in Serbia. I grew up in the Midwest and I vote in New York. So that's me. I'm not very good about talking about myself, but let me just say a few things and then we'll talk about DA, which is really what we're all about. I've been with Democrats abroad, I guess one way or another, over 15 years. I have set up a country committee in the Czech Republic along with the wonderful and inestimable Julia Bryan. I've served on the executive committee at the global level, both as treasurer and as vice chair. And I'm now, as many of you know, continue to be focused on fundraising, where we had a banner year last year. And the reason why I think fundraising is important because it helps us get out the vote. I mean, that's the reality, and that's why I continue to be involved in it. Let me say a few more things about DA. I guess I'm a numbers guy, and I think Ada mentioned that we have 200,000 members now, which is great. I mean, it's some tremendous growth over the last few years. And as a number, that's equal to the overseas turnout in 2018. So our block of members represents an enormous component and foundation for getting out the vote among Americans overseas. But we've got to make sure that all of our members vote. You know, in past midterm elections, we've seen a tremendous drop off from the presidential election. I mean, 2018 was a good year. It was 3 times what 2014 was, but we've got to do better and get more people, the total overseas vote was 3 times in 2018. And I think the DA vote was 8 times what it was before, but we've got to do better and we've got to reach our members. We still get questions from longtime members saying, can we vote in the midterms? So clearly there's an education process. But we've also, as all of you know, we've got to look beyond our membership to those millions of Americans who are just still not voting. And you know what Fareed talked about in terms of the platform, I think issues will be crucial to reaching a lot of those people. It's not only good because we're pushing for issues that are important, but I think it will also help us get out the vote. You know, I'm the opposite of Aaron. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. I grew up in a Democratic family, you know, I won't say blue dog or yellow dog or whatever the phrase is. Occasionally I would maybe balk at voting for some Democrats, but so, you know, you don't really have to convince me but if we can show that we are pushing for issues that are important to people, not only in the United States, but overseas, this will help us get out the vote. The other thing that I want to talk about is, you know,
I'm sorry, Art, that's your time.
Oh,
hopefully someone will ask.
Notice?
I said it, but you must not have heard me. I'm so sorry.
I was speaking too loudly. Okay.
I've been trying to ride the line, you know, so that I'm not like.
Can I say one more thing? one more thing. As I
Okay.
said, I'm not too good about tooting my horn, but please look at the endorsements that I have because they're from people that I respect and I hope you respect. They're on the website and they're on my Facebook page, Art for VC. That's it. Sorry, I went over the
That's
time.
okay.
I had my
Okay.
stopwatch on, but I wasn't looking at it. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so those were all of our vice chair candidates giving their initial statement. So now, due to time constraints on one of our treasurer candidates, I'm going to switch secretary and treasurer, and we're going to go to treasurer first. So the first treasurer candidate is James Chizungu. I am 100% certain I just pronounced that, and I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. It's pronounced Chizungu. You sort of pronounce the U's like double O's. And so I guess I try to pride myself on my efficiency, so I'll try to keep this within the time limits. And so my name is James. I've been an active member of Democrats Abroad in the UK, Mexico, Belgium, and Denmark. I vote in Nevada, and I'm obviously running for the position of International Treasurer. The main role of the treasurer is to maintain accurate and detailed records, analyze accounting history, extrapolate trends, make predictions, and ultimately to keep DPCA out of scandal. In the end, the role itself is very unglamorous and requires a different kind of leader than one that makes a good chair or vice chair. It requires a leader that is comfortable working mostly in the background and is more of a listener and creative problem solver than one that is good at networking and meeting organizing. In my daily life, I work in financial controlling for a multinational fintech company headquartered in Copenhagen. That means from 9 to 5, I spend the majority of my time reviewing our historical and real-time accounting to ensure that it complies with both internal accounting policies as well as international and locally generally accepted accounting procedures. Moreover, together with 6 other group controllers, we create the quarterly and annual reports that help communicate the financial health of both our Copenhagen headquarters and the overall global group. I stress that the principal role of the treasurer is to keep DPCA and therefore the DNC out of scandal. I am well equipped to perform in this space. That's it.
All right, very, very efficient. Good job. Okay, so our other candidate on the call today is Quinn.
Wynn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Can I go ahead and start then?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, DA Switzerland, and thank you all for joining on the call today. So just to give you some background, I've lived abroad for about 10 years now across multiple continents. So something that I think is important is that I do understand the unique challenges of Americans living abroad globally across multiple countries. My experience with DA is that I have been serving as the chair of Colombia since 2019, and I also was the former co-chair of the Global Youth Caucus when it reformed and just recently stepped down when I aged out. I also serve on the steering committee of the AAPI caucus, and I'm on the Diversity Inclusion Committee. So I'm very involved across a lot of DA organizational pieces. And I think that's something that's really important in this role, considering that every member of the executive committee has a vote for all matters for Democrats abroad, whether it be related to the Treasury or other things as well. I do care a lot about the financial health of this organization, and I'm really excited to see that over the election year, we had an unusual year, but we brought in almost $1 million US. And something that I see as a need for this organization is to really begin to more professionalize the way that we track this money. So one of the first initiatives that I want to bring in is to bring to the executive committee the possibility of switching to a professional software to track our budgeting and finances, with one that I've researched already that's made specifically for political organizations. It does things, for instance, such as using AI to track our donors and when we should be emailing them, in what way we can. These are just little things that we can do to actually keep more on track with the people who are already donating to us. So hopefully be able to get
1
them,
minute.
thank you, to continue giving more, and for us to find a way to get other people to donate as well. Because I think something very important to the long-term financial health of our organization is to make sure that we are looking at donors and funding across grants and pulling in money in other ways, and keeping tabs on that so that we can continue a way to grow it in the future. I do have a lot of experience in startups and running a business, running two, actually. I have my own business and I also run a joint venture partnership. And so in my day-to-day, I do work a lot with long-term planning, with managing teams, and with managing the budgets for these organizations as well. So I think I'm out of time, but thank you again, DA Switzerland, and thank you for switching times for us because it's in the middle of my workday.
I wanted to be as accommodating as I could. So thank you very much.
I really appreciate that.
Our candidates for treasurer. So now we are going to move on to our candidates for secretary. One candidate is on the call today, and that is Beth Landry. Beth?
Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank DA Switzerland for making this forum possible, as well as for stepping up to lead in Switzerland in 2021. My name is Beth Landry, and my pronouns are they, them. I am a candidate for International Secretary for the 2021 to 2023 term. I'm joining you from Malmö, Sweden, where I've resided with my spouse and our husky since 2018, and I'm a proud Maryland voter. My professional experience includes having been a critical care registered nurse, a nursing union shop steward, and also a statewide organizing director for a Maryland nonprofit. I also served as an elected Maryland delegate to the 2016 DNC. I've been involved with Democrats Abroad in several capacities. Here in Sweden, I served as a chapter secretary, our former vice chair, and phone banking coordinator for the 2020 election cycle. Regionally and globally, I've been involved as a DA WebEx team member and as a deputy regional vice chair for here in the EMEA region. The international secretary position necessitates a blend of administrative skills, agility with organizational tools, and the ability to function both autonomously and collaboratively. From the Dpca Executive Committee to an inquisitive DA member and anywhere in between, the International Secretary is both a team member and a resource, and I will be that. I'm committed to both navigating our challenges and working diligently towards solutions. Through the scope of my pledged role, it's largely behind the scenes, but I do carry an immense appreciation for the fundamental organizing power our relationships make possible in our voter outreach success. Looking forward to 2022 and beyond, I know our best work will be done transformationally and not transactionally. More information about me, my candidacy, and my priorities for the role of Dpca International Secretary are available on my website, www.bethlandry.com. That's BETHLANDRY.com. I'm asking you tonight for your support and your vote. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Beth. So those were our secretarial candidates today, and we will move on to the final position for today's event, which is the candidates for legal counsel. There are 4 on the slate, 3 have RSVP'd, and we will start with Sally Schwartz.
I'm here. Sorry.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have a great bandwidth, so I turn everything off while I'm listening. Okay, so thank you for arranging this. I think it's a great idea. For those who don't know me, I'm Sally Schwartz, and I'm running for international chair. I've been a lawyer for over 43 years, if you can believe that. First as a poverty lawyer in rural Pennsylvania, which is where I vote still. and where I represented abused women, welfare recipients, homeless people with regard to violations of their civil rights. And I organized the first women's shelter outside of Harrisburg in the late 70s. When I moved to Paris in 1979, I became an international business lawyer, making deals all over the world. I have worked for 3 major law firms, and then I started my own firm with French partners in 1988 and have been its managing partner from the very beginning. I still work part-time for a number of clients, but I've lifted my foot off the gas pedal, as the French like to say. I have visited over 15 African countries doing pro bono work on women's rights, intellectual property issues, and advising governments on how to negotiate with mining and oil and gas companies. I also served as chair of the international section of the American Bar Association, during which I raised over 300,000 euros just for one meeting in Paris that I organized, and dealt with over 100,000 members in 90 countries. I joined DA about 15 years ago and have served as counsel and vice chair for DA France and as vice chair of the platform committee, under, so to speak, although we were all equal, Farid and Aaron, who I know very well. I was also a co-chair of the Global Women's Caucus until I stepped down and left it in able hands with Ann Hesse. And I'm now a member of the and chair of the Reproductive Justice Action Team. I have given drafting input to our code of conduct, several resolutions, and amendments to the DA charter. I am no stranger to the drafting and editing of documents. So why am I running? I'm running because I think DA can benefit from my 43 years of transactional legal advice to clients, also from my availability and from my general team building and leadership. My advice to clients is always solution-based. I don't speak legalese and I dislike complicating matters. When I see a problem, I find a solution. And there's no such thing in my book as not doable. Finally, I am dedicated to the principles of democracy and fair-mindedness. I get really angry when I see immoral or unjust actions, not to mention criminal acts which go unpunished. And I want to fight against racism, sexism, the denial of voting rights, the discrimination of all types and everywhere on earth, but particularly in the United States. I want to incite us to implement our platform so that it is no longer a dormant document in a drawer or on a website.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't get a warning. Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Okay, never mind. I just want to serve you. That's all. Last sentence. Art got a last sentence, so I get one too. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Between getting heard and not like really interrupting people. Our next candidate is Josh Vanderplug.
Thank you very much, Liz. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Vanderplug. I'm a Florida voter, but a Michigan native based in London, and I'm asking for your vote for Global Legal Counsel. Thanks very much to Democrats Abroad Switzerland for hosting this event today. As an international development lawyer and a union organizer at a major multilateral organization, I know how to use my professional legal skills to advance progressive values and bring about positive change. This is my passion, and it's the reason why I'm running for Global Counsel. The role requires not only technical expertise and fair-mindedness, but also long-term strategy and blue sky thinking for how our internal governance can make us more effective at our core mission, mobilizing the overseas vote to elect Democratic candidates. Having served in various legal and financial capacities across the organization, including the past 4 years as DA UK Treasurer, a member of the Global Bylaws Committee and the 2020 Global Presidential Primary Committee, and chair of the Credentials and Rules Committees for both the EMEA and Global Conventions in 2020. I've worked to develop a reputation for being fair-minded, detail-oriented, and a team player. As Global Counsel, in addition to utilizing my own areas of expertise, I'll build a team of lawyers to leverage different skills and not be afraid to hire outside counsel on occasion, particularly in situations that would boost the visibility of Democrats abroad and have a significant impact on the lives of Americans living overseas. One of the projects that I will develop will be a knowledge management system on the Democrats Abroad Wiki. This will include guidance on common compliance issues that country committees face, as well as trainings and key compliance forms, for instance, relating to GDPR, FEC contribution limits, and guidance for communications. We have significant institutional knowledge as an organization, but we rely too heavily on a few key individuals. We need to make resources more user-friendly and accessible, both to lawyers and non-lawyers alike. As an all-volunteer organization, our culture can also impact our effectiveness at carrying out our mission. We've made great strides to promote diversity and inclusion at the global level, so we should also create model policies for country committees to use as well.
1 minute.
We as Democrats hold ourselves to the highest standards of mutual respect, and failure to live up to these standards can discourage people from volunteering, which in turn reduces our ability to get out the vote. I pledge to maintain a collegial and cooperative attitude to establish a culture of respect, both in tone and through the policies that set the standards we expect of ourselves, including revisions to the Code of Conduct and the adoption of an anti-harassment and bullying policy. I'm running for Global Counsel because I believe I'm the right person for this moment. With over a decade practicing law and as a Democrats Abroad member, I have the experience and expertise needed to fulfill the core responsibilities of the role. But just as importantly, I also have the progressive values and judgment to provide the legal and policy advice that we need as we approach 200,000 members. If you're deciding who to hire as Democrats Abroad lawyer, hire me. Please visit facebook.com/Josh4DA. That's Josh, the number 4DA, or feel free to email me at josh4da@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our final candidate for legal counsel is Orlando Vidal. I understand how it feels to have a name at the end of the alphabet.
It's okay, I'm used to it. First, I'd like to thank you, Liz, and the rest of DA Switzerland for organizing this event. You're doing really a great service to DA. I also want to acknowledge the candidates for international office, and in particular, those standing for counsel. I know them as good and committed people. I respect, like, and admire them. We have much to be proud of with them stepping up and agreeing to serve if elected. Again, I'm Orlando Vidal. I'm a partner at Norton Rose Fulbright, one of the largest law firms in the world with over 50 offices worldwide. I live in Dubai. I've lived here for the past 11 years. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but I vote in DC. One thing you need to know about me is that coming from Puerto Rico and living in DC for many years, I know firsthand how important is the right to vote. Mainly because unfortunately, the US citizens of Puerto Rico don't have the right at the federal level, and DC residents don't have voting representation in Congress. Because I know how important is the right to vote, almost from the moment I arrived in Dubai, I became a member of Democrats Abroad. In DA, I've served twice in the role of international counsel for 4 years, from 2013 to 2017. I also served for 4 years as one of DA's DNC members from 2016 to 2020. And of course, I've served as chair of DA UAE, and I currently serve as its counsel. So one question you might all have is, why do I want to become international counsel again? I'll tell you. Our next chair will be someone who has never served in the international ExCom. Most, if not all, in our new ExCom won't have had that experience.
Oh dear.
If there is one role that could benefit the international ExCom with experience, is the counsel role. Believe me, when I first ran for the role and won, I had a huge learning curve.
1 minute.
But I was lucky to have first served under a chair who already had significant ExCom experience. Unlike the other candidates, I'll be able to hit the ground running and help the rest of our new ExCom members as much as possible. All modesty apart, I think I served very successfully in the role of international counsel, which makes me uniquely able to step into the role quickly and with no learning curve. The bottom line is I want to serve. I think I can serve best as DA's lawyer, and with the benefit of experience, I know I can serve DA even better. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Orlando, and thank you to all of the candidates and everyone who has joined us. We have quite the attendance list this evening. So the next portion of the event is going to be the Swiss Dpca voting reps presenting a question to each of the candidate slates. So Eric Burns, our chair, is going to ask a question of the chair candidates.
Hello. First of all, I want to say how honestly proud I am to be amongst all of you. All of you have very, very great profiles, and it's going to be difficult to honestly choose who I'd like to vote for. I'll try to make my question quick. I want to ask a lot of the questions. I'm going to keep it simple. I understand that cooperation is really, really important to both fundraise, engage, and also empower our voters. And my question to the chairs is, how will you facilitate communication and cooperation among the country chairs? I don't, do we have an order? I guess we'll go alphabetical order.
How about if we go reverse alphabet just to mix it up from last time? So Ada would go first.
Certainly. So that's a great question. There's different kinds of fundraising. There's fundraising for the global organization, and there's also fundraising that has to take place at the local level, right? Because every country committee also needs to raise a bit of funds to kind of sustain their operations. And of course, keeping that in compliance with FEC regulations. So, you know, treasurer and legal keeping us fully compliant. I think it's really important that people understand what the rules of the road are. I think it's really important that the global organization led by the chair understands the rules of the road as well. And then just designs specific messaging that is very clear, setting targets, having tools that are available. We do a lot with webinars now, right? And that's great, but we need to diversify the different kinds of strategies to write and raise money. And the great thing about our greatest resource, which is not money, but instead is our people, is that people want to give. So we know that people want to give to us. We just have to put the right word in the right ear. One of the things that I did just as myself in interacting with the DNC over the last few years was I actually pushed the DNC to reinstate us being able to receive, to treat our high net worth donors the same as their high net worth donors. And that would put back into place a relationship that we needed to have with the DNC so that our people who wanted to write big checks for us could do that. So we need to unlock both the people who can write bigger checks for us, make that easier. We need to also unlock the small dollar fundraising, which is the backbone of how we organize. We have to do that with a strategy and a plan. We have to structure that. So that's how I would approach that.
Thank you, Ada. And next would be Candace.
Hi, thank you for the question, Eric. And while I would fundamentally agree with much of what was just said, I understood your question to be specifically about how to facilitate cooperation and coordination among the country committees. So I'd like to speak a little bit about that. One thing that I've experienced here leading a 30-person XCOM with 14 robust chapters throughout Germany is that you need a centralized point for communication. Within Germany, we've done our monthly XCOM calls. I also introduced a chapter chairs call again for the 14 chapters. An additional 14 precinct leaders that we have here in Germany, again, because that central point of communication is so necessary. I can tell you that as I experienced the past 2 years as a country chair, and you might have this now yourself, having that point of coming together and of convergence is so important. And that's why I would really like to introduce to the global level a meeting between the global chair and the international XCOM at large, together with country leadership, again, on a voluntary basis, but to provide a platform where the global teams can report back to the national levels can share among themselves and update global on how the progress is coming along, and really set a baseline for accountability and progress in the plans that Democrats Abroad is carrying through. That applies to how we approach fundraising, that applies to how we approach GOTV, that applies to how we approach our communications work. And again, having the centralized meeting is one way that I would facilitate that cooperation. Very quickly, a second point, I would also like to introduce a quarterly schedule from the Global Committee that outlines when our newsletters are going out, what fundraisers are happening, what GOTV and activism projects are happening, that allows our country leaders to then amplify and reinforce these messages at the country and city level.
Thank you, Candace. And our final answer for this question will come from Angela.
So cooperation and coordination between country committees and the regional and global levels are very important. And one of the things that I would like to do to facilitate that is to create a additional position that's an internal communications coordinator that would allow us to organize and structure the events that we're doing, to be able to distribute that and actually communicate the information to the various country committees so that they can use the ideas that other people have to share information, to gather information on how to do events, and basically keep track of what's going on, because it's very difficult if you're single-mindedly focused on getting out the vote in your country to know what's going on in every other place and what you're conflicting with or what other people are doing that you could do too. So that is to have an internal, in addition to our external communication coordinator, is something that I think we very much need. And as far as fundraising goes, we definitely need to figure out ways to fundraise better and to get more input of funds from the 200,000 people that we have as members. That honestly, if everyone gave $5, we'd have a lot of money. We'd have a lot more money than we'd know what to do with. Well, no, we'd know what to do with it. But so we have to find interesting ways to get people to give money. And we shouldn't limit ourselves to just thinking about the high dollar people. We should try to actually get more of the low dollar, the Bernie Sanders $27 sort of model a year. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Angela. And thank you to all three chair candidates for those answers. Now I'm going to switch the order again a little bit because one of our representatives will need to step off the call soon. So we're going to have a question from Zachary Bailey to the treasurer candidates, which would just be one now.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, like Eric said, just to pick one for every position. There's so many wonderful people here. So what I'm going to ask is a little bit of a companion, I guess, to what Eric asked, in that I was interested, since we are now moving to a more digital age, we still have plenty of paper pamphlets and stuff that we hand out all the time. But I was wondering, what kind of investments would you want to push for if you entered into the office of treasurer, to help expand our get out the vote efforts in 2022 and beyond?
Since Quinn had to step off, that'll be James, please.
Yeah. And so your question is interesting because it's one, what would we do in order to go ahead and enhance our get out the vote efforts? And then, but you also added a component of digital to it, and sort of the lead up. But I'm not entirely sure it's necessarily joined, right? And I think my opponent Quinn actually has a slightly different approach to this. For me, I think the most important thing is to quantify and use more metrics-based systems in order to go ahead and make financial decisions, right? So we know how much we're spending to go ahead and on a various tasks. Let's take like phone banking, for example, right? If we can quantify every dollar spent equals how many calls made or how many people trained or volunteers trained or et cetera, if we can attach specific numbers to that, we can identify where we really need to go ahead and invest our money. I haven't seen how it's done at the global level, but I've seen how things or how money is managed at the local level in more than one country, and it's oftentimes not tracked up to this level. We put money towards things and just sort of hope they're going to work out well, or just sort of like it works out the way it works out, and then there's not much reflection done on how well that money was spent. My opponent Quinn, who I did not know before this race, but we actually spoke on the phone yesterday, and I want to say I think she's amazing. She's not here, so she can't speak for herself. But if you were to vote for either me or her, you will be in good hands. And I think her approach to this is that she would like to go ahead and invest more money into replacing our legacy software, right? And so that would answer more directly to your question about digital. And so I think if you really want to focus on digital, she might have more of the mindset towards that right now. But like I said, I think she's great. And if I were to win, I would want her on my team. And so yeah, hopefully I was able to answer for both myself and her since she's not here.
Thank you very much for that thoughtful and thorough answer, James. So now, as Switzerland Vice Chair, I am going to ask a question of the Vice Chair candidates. So, having done this for a year and some now, I know that it's hard to get people to delegate. So how will you get your chair to delegate to you? And again, we will go reverse alphabetical order. So
Yeah, it's me, right? Me?
yes, it's you.
And I'll apologize again for running over. Please cut me off this time. I'll even do it shorter. You know, I think what's come out is that our organization has grown tremendously, and what we do has grown. You know, the growth of the caucuses over the last few years, you know, is tremendous, and there's so much to manage that I think that whoever is the chair and I will work together. You know, I don't say divide and conquer or whatever, but I think, you know, there will be room for all of us to do, you know, there is room in this organization for anybody who wants to work as much as possible. So I don't think there'll be I don't think they'll be fighting over responsibilities. We'll just figure out how to do it best. And if I could just say, I just want to second what James said about fundraising. We try as hard as we can to apply metrics to it and make sure that we invest in the most cost-efficient methods, the things that turn out the most votes per dollar. And that's something certainly that I will pledge to continue as vice chair. Anyway, thanks. I'll cut it off there because I took too much time the last time. Thanks.
Thank you, Art. That's very responsible of you. And the next candidate is David.
Yeah, I'm back doing the same thing. I'm turning off and on because my internet's a little fuzzy at this time of day. Yeah, so for me, I think to really inspire the chair to delegate, it really is more to do with building a strong rapport and a demonstrated capacity to serve as an effective surrogate, and also demonstrated and proven ability to successfully implement programs and achieve success. So it's really something that's accomplished through building that relationship and forming a really effective and dynamic team that can work together throughout the tasks and challenges they're faced, implementing organizational goals and activities. And it's definitely something I'm eager to do. And like I said, even with implementing a 700-person diplomatic conference here in Kyiv, it's something that I've always really risen to a task of trying to accomplish and proving that we can accomplish what's often viewed as the impossible. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And the next answer will come from Aaron.
Thanks very much for that question. That's a really good question. I agree with David implicitly that rapport is a big part of this. As I mentioned, Ada Shen is actually the person who got me into DA, which is a big part of, I've had a strong working relationship with her over the years. The same can be said about Angela in that I worked with her very, very closely on the platform committee. And I've had a great conversation with Candace recently. So with any of the candidates for chair that have spoken today, I feel like I have very strong rapport already and have already had them delegate things to me, frankly. I think also this is an area where I have a lot of experience asking for more responsibility or pushing to do more or improve a process. I'm very proactive in this regard. Something people don't know about the platform committee work and the survey that went out is that wasn't part of the plan that the current XCOM gave us. It wasn't part of the mandate that they gave us. It was something that we dreamed up by ourselves and had to implement. And I actually remember being on a call, standing outside my apartment in Beijing, freezing in the winter for like an hour with Fareed, talking about all the ways we could make this platform committee be more open, and the survey was a big one of them. So I'm no stranger to taking initiative and finding out what we need to do in order to better processes, tasks, and the work that we need to get done. And as I mentioned, I've never been shy about putting my hand up and taking on more work. I think Art says it well, there's more work than there are hands sometimes in this organization. And, for the last 5 years, every single chance I have to put my hand up for something, even unsavory tasks like sitting on the global NEC and tabulating votes, those kind of less than high profile stuff. Those are all things that I have a lot of, I have done over the years and pushed forward and pushed to do more. And as a vice chair, that's exactly the same thing I would continue doing, regardless of who is elected as chair, is I will work to improve the processes that we have, find ways to contribute, and ask for more up to the maximum of my capacity.
Thank you, Aaron. And last but not least will be Fareed.
Thanks so much, Liz. And I apologize, I have to jump off this call right after because it's a bit late here in Korea where I am right now. So apologies in advance for that, but thank you for the opportunity. So much like the other candidates, I believe that the leadership of the DA is far too much for one person to manage. And any attempt to do so would result in a horrible effort of all the horror stories you hear about micromanaging and how it can really suffocate large organizations. So I will rely on, I think, my skills, which I believe are complementary to the potential chairs, to really build this policy-based activism approach. And that's the initiative that I really want to take on for myself, because I really believe that Democrats Abroad, our membership, is a fundamentally progressive membership. And we are, in turn, capable of being a tent pole that can be much further to the left, much more loudly than we currently are within the larger Democratic Party. And so I think that this is an area that my professional experience earlier in my career and my passion are complementary skills that can be provided to lead on these areas, while of course supporting and advising the chair in other ways, which include of course, the really important voter registration, get out the vote work, the organization of the country committees, and the growth of our overall membership, which are no small tasks. So I really hope to support support not just the chair, but the rest of the XCOM by growing our numbers, and by, as how Art Shankler put it, this in turn will rile people up to get more involved, this policy-based activism, and register, and perhaps register to vote if they haven't in our primary and in other races, and perhaps also fundraise more. So I believe this is all a virtuous circle that could happen. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Fareed. Get some sleep. Next on the agenda would have been Vivian asking a question of Beth as the secretarial candidate, but Beth had to step off the call. So we will now go to Jazz asking a question of the legal counsel candidates.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for your time and your commitment. Thank you all for stepping up as a diverse representation of candidates. I just love it. And also, thank you for giving us all an opportunity to get to know you. My question is, actually, there are two questions in one. I'll take some of Vivian's time away, but I'll make it very brief. As a legal counsel, how would you promote and demand diversity and inclusion within Democrats Abroad, and who of the global officers should be held accountable to uphold and ensure the diversity and inclusion policies?
And we will start with Orlando this time.
Well, the very best thing you can do to improve diversity at the XCOM is to elect me, the only Hispanic running for this position, or for any position in the XCOM. In all seriousness, though, these are issues that are very dear and close to my heart. I'm an active member of our Hispanic Global Caucus. And when I was a DNC member, I was an active member of the DNC Hispanic Caucus. I see that Art is telling me that Fareed is Hispanic. Yes, I knew that. I knew that, Art. The more the merrier. Maybe you should elect two. As International Counsel, I played an important role in this space, in particular in the drafting of our delegate selection plan. By the rules and regulations of the DNC, we needed to make sure that it included a diverse group of candidates for delegates. And we made sure to take that responsibility seriously. So I played an important role there. I would very much like to continue playing that role. And to your second question, who should be responsible? It really is the responsibility of everyone in DA and everyone at the XCOM level. Again, the International Council plays a special role because of the delegate selection plan in ensuring that our delegations are as diverse as possible. So I guess I would say that the International Council should play and continue to play that special role, but it should be important to everyone at the XCOM.
Thank you, Orlando. Next up is Josh.
Yeah, thanks very much, Liz. And thank you very much, Jazz, for that question as well. You know, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I think it's two things. One is obviously the tone from the top, right? And we're, I think, building a lot of strengths as the culture of the organization and promoting diversity and inclusion, starting with the diversity and inclusion summit webinars that we've had, which have been fantastic. In addition to that, I think as Global Counsel, there's value in putting down on paper the values that we expect of ourselves and that we hold ourselves to. And we're building our diversity and inclusion initiatives very well at the global level. But I think that we need to have that trickle down as well. And the engagement at the delegate selection plan process has been fantastic. We need to make sure that emanates at every level of the organization. It encourages people of every background and people who would not necessarily be encouraged to run for leadership positions or to be involved in leadership to do so, both at the global level, country committees, chapters, at every level up and down the organization. So I think it's two things. One is the culture and the tone that we set from ourselves, and the second is the policies that we adopt. And to answer your question about who should be responsible, I mean, I agree with Orlando that in terms of setting policies, that is the role of the Global Legal Counsel. But ultimately, this is a group effort, right? We're an organization that prides itself on small d democratic values, and we need to hold those at every person who's involved in the organization.
Thank you, Josh. And last for this question is Sally.
Yeah, hi. Diversity and who? I think that I join Orlando when he says diversity is a question for everybody. I join Josh when he says it's the tone from the top, but I join neither of them because I think we should have a diversity officer who is responsible for implementing all of our policies way, way down into the weeds. For example, in the American Bar Association, we require that all panels be diverse, which means different things to different people. I mean, I could say the same thing about electing a woman as International Counsel, but I'm not going to go there because I think we should elect the very best candidates and assure that we have diversity at the same time. I think that diversity, I think that the panels and the webinars that have taken place are extremely useful. I don't have the statistics on how many people were there. I think they were probably too long for many people to join. 3-4 hours to dedicate is a lot to ask of people. I think we have to have diversity at the top of our brain every time we think DA. And I think we should implement policies that go way beyond what we have already. I think that the diversity and the legal documents that we have can be improved, but I don't think that's where differences are made. I think differences are made in everything we do, everyone we talk to, every event that we plan, and every speaker that we invite, and as well as the panelists. I think we should, and I still think we should have, I do think we should have a diversity officer, create a diversity officer, because when Josh says it's a message or a tone from the top, that speaks from the top. That speaks for responsibility. And that's part of the council's job, but it's certainly compliance with diversity is not all the council's job. So that's what I think we should be doing. Compliance is a big part of the council's job, but I think diversity is everybody's business. And I think that's where we should be going with it. Diversity in all senses of the term, and training, so that we're aware of what's going on. And I think one of the things that Angela Fobbs has done, which I want to give her a shout out on in the Black Caucus, but even before that happened, is she has great panels and great exercises that people can do to teach people about how racist we all really are, and how we have to face up to it, and how we have to get over it. And I think, that's a subject for XCOM, but it's also a subject for the global meeting, the global meetings, the EMEA meetings. It should be part of our DNA. It shouldn't be just something we think about when we write legal documents. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally, and thank you for that great question, Jazz. So now we will start the open floor portion of the Q&A, and we will be starting with Vivian.
Thanks, Liz. And let me, my first time to be heard, also congratulate all of you and applaud all of you. And I agree with Jazz. This is a wonderful screen I'm looking at, and it underscores who we are. And so I was going to ask the question of the secretary candidates, and I certainly hope Beth feels well and better soon. But I'm going to pivot and ask a version of that to the chair candidates, if I may, to Angela, Candace, and Ada. My question had to do with, given that we've all echoed and underscored how getting out the vote is at the core of what we do and what we have to do and how we do it. How do you see a secretarial role, or what's the best way for someone as secretary, first at the global level, international, but also at country and even at chapter levels, facilitating and playing their best part around getting out the vote? And if you were chair, how would you like to be the leader, or from your leadership position, help and see that happen?
Thank you for that question, Vivian. We'll let Candace go first this time because she hasn't gone first yet.
Thank you, Vivian, and I'm glad that you're asking about the coordination, really, of the entire XCOM and not one person specifically. Looking to the secretarial role, there are a few things that pop out immediately that I believe would really enhance the work that we're doing, starting again with the meeting minutes and the distribution of those minutes and recordings that happen at the global level. So again, talking about creating a transparent work environment where people can clearly see where things stand in terms of the progression we're making, who's doing what. The secretary plays a really instrumental role in facilitating that communication. Extending beyond that, and I am fortunate enough to have had some conversations with Beth and heard about their vision really of the role. And I know that one thing that they are really prioritizing is doing membership trainings throughout the year with secretaries, creating a secretary forum, for example, so that for some of you voting reps who might be newer on the call, every year we do membership cleanup where we have to verify all of our members again and make sure that we've heard from them in the past 4 years. And sometimes you can get slammed with this at the end of the year. And I know that Beth is really looking to, again, initiate this conversation more strongly with country secretaries so that we're not having the bulk of this work come as a surprise then right in the middle of the holiday season. So why does this matter? It matters because the data that we have drives how precise we can be in our outreach. It circles back to the costs again, knowing that every dollar that we spend is really going to reach someone who is still living abroad. So having a clean database is incredibly important in terms of how we're allocating our resources and directing them. And I think that's one area that I'm certain that Beth would do a fantastic job at, and I look forward to working with them.
Thank you, Candace. The next for this question will be Ada.
Thank you very much for this question and the opportunity to respond to it, Vivian. I understood this to be primarily about get out the vote, for which I think it is important to look at kind of who owns the data, you know, for the membership data, right? Like, and who uses that data in order to mobilize. So I'm really, really pleased to hear about the kinds of plans that have been discussed for the secretarial function, and the idea of membership trainings year round. I think that's very good. Certainly at the country committee level, there are many secretaries who are, you know, I'm not sure that we have defined that function really well beyond meeting minutes in some country committees, right? We do a lot of database intensive work, in fact, and in larger country committees, certainly in France, the same may be true in Germany and certainly other places where the job has become so big that in fact we actually have other officer positions, GOTV officer, membership database IT officer. We actually have 3 officers in France who have overlapping functionality aside from the secretary that affects membership cleanup and verification. So I think it actually does take kind of an overview of the entire apparatus around GOTV. That is, of course, our main activity. But you know, we do have a global GOTV team, right? The voter help team or the VFA team. We need to build a bigger bench around that team so that we can understand better and get into the weeds on how that data interacts with the call hub team, with the various projects. And again, if we have a voter engagement team, as I'm proposing, right, we can actually get a lot more information about, there are fields in the database that we never touch. There is so much granularity about membership and where they vote. We don't even know how good the data is because we don't track how good the data is. So I think that the secretary's function is a really important piece, but not the only piece to looking at how we can better unlock the GOTV potential, the voter mobilization potential of our members and of voters abroad. And again, taking a generally just beyond even our members, taking a more data-driven approach, making sure that we are measuring our impacts as we go, making sure that where possible, we're actually really looking at, there's a lot of amazing data that is available on the VFA site. I'm very excited to have the opportunity, I hope, to get into some of those weeds and figure out kind of where are the best places for different functions to own the responsibility for stitching that together.
Thank you very much, Ada. And Angela?
Hi, Vivian. I think that the Global Secretary is a key position to keep us organized and inform the rest of Democrats abroad as to what we're doing in our meetings, distributing information, the database cleanup, of course, and as Ada said, maybe adding some more information into the fields where we can target our members better for different actions or information. I think that Beth has a lot of great plans about rotating the global XCOM meetings. She's got a whole thing laid out about that, which I thought was really interesting. Might be a little difficult for some people to keep rotating around, but we'll make it. So for me, the secretary position is a key position, and I think by working together, once we're working together, we'll figure out what's the best way to utilize her talents or his talents. The other guy. Isn't there another person?
There.
Yes, there is a second.
There's a second person.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all. Liz?
That question. Next in the queue is Kendra.
Hi, great. Thanks, DA, for putting this on. Thank you, candidates, for making yourself available. I have 2 questions, but I'll only do the one now. And if time permitting, after everyone has asked one, I'll come back to my second one. This one is specifically for chairs and vice chairs. Sorry, everyone else. What do you think is your specific role as chair and vice chair to the DNC? Because you are DNC members as well. So what do you think your role is, and how do you think you can elevate our voice, our Democrats Abroad voice in the DNC, to make sure that we keep functioning as an organization and keep getting things like recognition and support from the DNC as well?
Thank you for that question, Kendra. We'll start with vice chair candidate this time, and we'll go with Aaron since Fareed had to leave.
Sure. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I'm actually currently serving on the DNC team. I was elected to that position. So I do bring a degree of experience in terms of representing Democrats abroad to the DNC. I have to confess, I've only been in that role for a short time. And so I'm definitely not as deeply as experienced as some of the other members on the DNC team. But fortunately, I've been able to attend every single global meeting we've had and interact with different speakers from the DNC that we invited along. For example, Ken Martin, who is essentially the chair of all the state party chairs. And another thing that I've been working on, and this is actually inspired from being in Asia Pacific. There is a lot of energy in Asia Pacific for working on state mobilization and advocacy for voter rights on a state-by-state basis. So actually just earlier today, I reached out to the Midwest caucus chair. So like the DNC has like regional groups. And I reached out to the person in charge of the Midwest region, which is where I vote and where I'm representing DA to the DNC currently, and trying to get a meeting on the calendar where we can share some of our ideas. Another thing that has been an issue lately is, I don't know if anybody saw this, but the DNC sent around a survey asking for our feedback on the election cycle, and they left off Democrats abroad. So there is a perennial issue with raising our voices to the DNC. And I think noting where those issues pop up time and time again, meeting with the right people and making our voices heard consistently is very important there, not just when we want something, but also when we can, when we've delivered on things to the DNC. And so I feel very well positioned to be that kind of bridge as a vice chair. It's a very natural development for me. One thing that I don't know, one thing that I think is a little bit different, my perspective on advocating to the DNC is that within the DNC, a lot of this work is very informal relationships. You have to know who to talk to. We could go on a long-winded rant about why the DNC should be more public and have better accountability, more open and transparent informational access. But one of the things that is just true is you have to show up and email people and harangue people and get them on the phone with you. And I work in outbound sales, so I am no stranger to just harassing people on LinkedIn or email or whatever until they'll talk to me about what it is we need to get done. And so if I was serving as a vice chair, I'm not shy in even the slightest way about going to people and saying, hey, listen, there's an issue and I want to talk to you about it. And you're going to have an email every week until we have a chance to figure this out. And so I'm not shy about doing that, and I would hope to, as vice chair, be an effective advocate for Democrats abroad to the DNC.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. David?
There. Yeah. So, hey, thanks, Kendra, for the question. Yeah, actually, it's an interesting one for me, and I think is something that again really pulls from a lot of my professional growth. And while I'm obviously not in a role that has that responsibility at present, too, a large number of my network are DNC members, and definitely learned and observed from their interactions and communications with them over the years. And to me, I think being serving in that role is really about diplomacy and being a good relationship builder, something which is at the heart of my professional work as well. So really, I think it comes down to networking, advocacy, and being a strong representative of DA's organizational and membership priorities. So it's a little bit of removing personal interest, but using those strong personal traits and professional skills to the benefit of the organization. I'll keep it short at that so everyone has a chance to answer.
Thank you, David. And Art?
Hi, I just want to take 10 seconds and point to this book as my prop in honor of, I saw in the chat box that the House passed the DC statehood bill. This is a book I got when I was 10 years old in 1965, pushing for DC statehood. So what is that, 55 years later? Maybe we're on the right track. And I got it signed by the man from Uncle, by the way. It's a long story. I'll tell you sometime. Look, and let me just drop one name. Katie, who's on the call, we met Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, when he was first chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party and came to the Association of State Democratic now committees meeting. And we met him. I think the relationship now with Jamie is very good, partially because he's been hearing about Democrats abroad for a long time. From all of us, not just Katie and I, but the whole leadership over years, and I think that's going to help us going forward. I try not to hold the fact that he went to Yale against him, but that's also another story. One thing I would say about our relationship with DNC, it can't simply be going to the meetings. It can't even simply be talking to the head of the DNC. What I think is we need to put our experts together with their experts so that we can learn from each other. Over the past year, I think if you talk to Julia and others, a lot of the state parties learned from us about how to hold online meetings because they didn't know anything about it before, and we've been doing it for years and they all had to do it because of the pandemic. So it's a two-way street, but we can get their resources. They've got data on voters. They've got state voter data that we can use going into 2022. Again, talking about the drop off from the presidential to the midterm, all of those people who voted in 2020 will be a major target for us going into 2022 because many of them who live overseas will not be voting unless we get to them. And they know how to vote because they've done it, but we just need to get them to them. So I think we need to work together with the DNC people, on data, on fundraising, on GOTV, put our experts together. They don't have to go through me as vice chair or whoever is elected as chair. We can lead the charge on putting them together, but we should just let them get on with it because there's a lot of good information that can go back and forth. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Art. And we will move on to the chair candidates. Angela, you can go first.
So I think our most important role with the DNC is relationship building. Since we are the only state party who has members that vote in just about every state and territory election, it puts us in a unique position that we can leverage. We have a lot in common with every state party because we have voters in every state. So I think one of the main things that we have to do as DNC members for Democrats Abroad is to keep Democrats Abroad in the forefront of their minds and of the DNC leaders and state party chairs and other DNC members so that we can build the relationship so that when they need us, they can call us, and when we need them, we can call them. We also have a lot in common as far as voter suppression because that every state that has a law for voter suppression, we are experiencing that too. And I think that we actually used a lot of our digital outreach expertise to help people, our digital expertise to help people in the other states when they were having to deal with COVID. So I think that the relationships are really the most important thing, and that's how we get things done.
Thank you, Angela. Ada, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. That's a great question. What is the role of the chair or vice chair in how we interact with the DNC? I think there's two main things. One is, of course, we are the overseas arm of the Democratic National Committee. So we are treated like an overseas state party. We have that relationship already. It is very important to maintain a good relationship. But I also think we have an opportunity to be very assertive about that relationship. We need to get their attention and make sure we keep their attention and make sure that they are staying focused on our issues, because our issues help them win. They help when we win, everybody wins. We flipped 6 states wide elections where there are critical Senate races in 2022. We know that 2022 is going to be, there's a lot of competition across every House race. We also know what the issues are from now to 2022. And we know that what we do in 2022 is going to lay the foundation for 2024. Okay, we already work digitally. We're already we raised $1 million and we did not get a lot of support from the DNC. I don't think we need to go hat in hand to the DNC anymore. I think we absolutely need to keep a good relationship, try and get those grants, get that money. We need to provide the data that will help us be more competitive, but we already are getting their attention. We need to keep that attention and hold it. And we need to get what from them? If we can get an executive director, I think we need an executive director from them. That's great. Or we get the funding support for it. That's good. We should go back to having that. We should be on iwillvote.com. It does not forward to votefromabroad.org. It should. Everything coming out from Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or whoever from the party is saying iwillvote.com, and it does not forward to votefromabroad.org. We need to fix that, okay? So that any voter going to any state via that massive portal, that massive infrastructure, when they click overseas, it's not going to FAP, it's coming to us. It's a state party platform. It's the DNC's platform. Why doesn't it come to us? They need to do things like that with us, right? We already have good relationships with many state parties. We can continue to do work on voter protection, voter turnout. We are proving our worth. We should have standby teams that are doing voter protection calls because we have volunteers with those interests. We need to tie together all of these myriad things that we're already doing, that activists are already kind of popping up and doing, and weave it into a coherent plan. And we go to the DNC and we say, this is who we are. This is who we are, and this is how we help you win. We can provide technology, we can provide support, we can provide excess capacity in close elections when it comes close to election day, and we're turning out the overseas vote that is going to make the difference in all of these races across the country. Hear us roar. That's how we do it.
Thank you, Ada. And Candace?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for holding on. I promise I'll make it interesting. For me, the question of the role of the chair or the vice chair in relation to our approach with the DNC is fundamentally a question of team building, of organizing, of strategizing, and realizing that strategy. And again, as country chair over the past 2 years in one of Democrats Abroad's largest country committees, I have always, from the start, convened people who were on the team. So a shout out to the DNC members who are on the call today, convening with you, discussing what the strategy should be, setting that strategy, realizing that strategy then, so that we have, again, a clear plan, that it shows how people fit into it, what is being done when, and how we're getting there. Realizing it too, I think in the context of 2020, it's a really exciting situation because in my opinion, we've never been better positioned to make our case to the DNC. We have the numbers there, as several people just mentioned. We flipped a lot of races. We flipped some really key swing states. This is now the time when we need to go back to that data, put together concrete, reports about what actually happened. I do view the relationship in a lot of ways as an investor-investee, setup. If we go to them and show them really concretely what it is that we have provided, what it is that we offer, the likelihood that they are going then to catch, that we're going to catch their attention, that we're going to eventually get funding for an executive director or other projects, study abroad, the list goes on, is much more likely. And then I think there's also an important component with the DNC strategy and what we're doing, and that's reporting back. That goes back to our membership. That goes back to all of the leaders who are on this call today. Again, being in the know about what it is that we are doing and how you can help us get there. On this note, I would also say, because Kendra, I think the second part of your question really went back to what are you going to do to elevate our voice at the DNC? That is a part of it, but I do also want to recognize that the DNC team over the past 4 years has built an incredibly strong foundation that we can use now going into the next cycle. There are several elements that I do think would take us a step further. In my candidate statement, you can read about my approach to state-based organizing, looking again, as Angela mentioned, voter suppression, education, access to education, healthcare. A lot of these issues are being decided at the state and local level. That's why I would really introduce state-based organizing so that we can push the overseas vote in these fields to help implement that progressive and humane policy, but also complement the efforts of state parties who are working on issues that really impact domestic voters. So in a nutshell, for me, the question goes back, the role of the vice chair or chair is to lead the DNC delegation by working together with the members, put together a plan, realize that plan, and report back.
Thank you, Candace. Next on the queue is Katie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Switzerland, for doing this. This is amazing. Thank you, candidates, not just for being here, but for stepping up. And thank you, everybody else on this call. Really, absolutely wonderful. We're in such a good position right now after 2020. Our numbers, our accomplishments, our growth, but our potential, we're still nowhere near reaching it. All of the things that we've talked about today need teamwork. So this is particularly for the team leader, which would be the chair, but Liz, you can ask this to any of the candidates, I think. How would you and how have you gone about recruiting, building, managing teams? This can't be done by anybody in any of these positions. How have you been a team builder and manager? Thank you.
Ada, you can go first.
So in my professional capacity, all I do is build teams out of whatever needs to be done with whoever is on hand. As a line producer for films, you go from 0 to 300 staff over a period of a few weeks. You run like hell. It's like a company cycle, except it's on a weekly cycle as opposed to a quarterly cycle. And then you ramp back down again. That ended up actually being really useful skill set for doing voter mobilization and doing this kind of organizing that we do in Democrats Abroad, because every country committee organizer is working with a different kind of condition. And you still got to get the thing done. So you have to remember what you're there to do. And then you look at what are the tools, what are the systems, what are the kinds of go-to skills, the hip pocket skills that every organizer needs to have in the field regarding our main purpose. So I think that what I've done is I've built teams from scratch, whether it was in China or whether it was stepping into a very established country committee in France. And I tried to look at what was the team, a country committee that was actually going through a reform period, right? So there was a new bylaws change. There was several new officer positions that came in. And I think that we've seen the proof of that work for the last 3 years, actually, since I've been here, where I went and I just said to everybody who was interested in organizing with Democrats Abroad, I said, the people who show up decide. And if you have interest and if you want to change America, we have our work that we can do from here. And that organization is Democrats Abroad. And we looked for ways to, from the volunteer standpoint, how do we better engage volunteers? And we actually built on a thing that Kendra did. Kendra in the Netherlands had built like an intake form right, a volunteer intake form. And we adapted that for our GOTV because we realized that in the kind of year we were in, everything you do is GOTV. And we use that, you know, because in the database, I want to volunteer, click this link to volunteer. It's almost not usable at the country committee level. You actually do need another level of information, an intake form, where then we've actually got a dedicated volunteer coordinator who then just examines that, does a preliminary outreach, identifies what the needs are, and places people where they need to go. So I think that those kinds of mechanisms, you have to delegate out. You have to have a good understanding, first of all, of what you're there to do. Sometimes you got to be a little creative about how you're going to roll those teams together. You have to look at the tools that they need, make sure they're having that support, and then you got to let people rise up and support them when they are in position. And that's what I think the job of the chair is. That's how I would approach it.
Thank you, Ada. Candace, you can go next.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Katie. Yes, of course, team building is incredibly important. I would say for the biggest takeaway actually of my chairship in Germany is that being a good leader is not doing everything yourself. And that is the vision really that I would bring now to the international chair position and the international XCOM as a whole, bearing that in mind. I would absolutely agree with the saying, you know, the people who show up decide, but I think that we as the leaders of this organization have a responsibility to make sure that even more people are showing up. And in my experience building teams, to go back to your question, Katie, that starts really with defining the task at hand. We circle back to principles of understandability, of accessibility. The more people understand why we're asking them to do things, how they see how that fits into the bigger picture, how that is contributing to getting out the overseas vote, the clearer that linkage is, and the more defined the task is, in my experience, the better results that we'll have. So at the principle of what guides me when I am building teams, and I have led and built many of them within Germany, and you can read about that on candaceforchair.com. That has really been the foundation. Again, having clearly defined tasks, manageable tasks that people understand what they're doing, and they understand why they're doing it.
Thank you, Candace. And Angela?
I believe that teamwork is the most important thing, and it is my style of leadership is a cooperative leader. As a project manager, you have to build teams from the ground up. But within Democrats Abroad, for the 2020 election, the GBC had several GOTV teams. We had teams that were doing research to look at judicial candidates in order to help with police violence and any candidate that was related to policing or the judicial branch. We had people that were connecting with the African American community through influencers and podcasters, contacting them in order to get us actually on their shows, or to get an article written about us, or to have our information put on their website to make their members be able to vote from abroad. We also had an outreach group to the various country committees that talked to each country committee about where we might find people that were an untapped resource for voting. So teamwork is incredibly important, and I've put on a lot of large events, and those, when we did our Earth Day Marathon a year ago, that was, I want to say it was 14 hours, but at this point, I don't know, it was all a haze, but that required a lot of teamwork to get, 30 or 40 people to come on at specific times and do various events during the day. Yes, when we had actually winter, Black History Month, we had another marathon, and that required a lot of coordination. I didn't do all the work for coordinating and putting everything together, but I think that without a team of people, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So it's very important, and I want to continue that in the future.
Thank you, Angela. Next in the queue is Eric.
Hey all again. I'll try to keep this one a bit quick. The question is honestly a bit complicated, so it'll be a bit challenging. I'm asking all of you guys to, it's for everyone, 30 seconds. How do you balance work, life, finance, and mental health in this job? And this question was inspired from looking at the very also inspirational time and financial commitments written in the descriptions online. And Liz will be organizing who will be speaking.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go down the list in order because there's a lot of people. So Angela, 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? There was a lot of things.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, it is a lot. Sorry, and it's going to be challenging. I'm sorry. How do you balance work and life, as well as finance and mental health?
How do I balance work and life? Work is life, and I try to make sure that my family's needs are met and I definitely like to have dinner with my family every night. That's very important to all of us, that we connect at dinner time, but actually through the pandemic, we've all been at home working. So there's not really a separation anymore in my household between work and life. We're just all together all the time. But in the past, yes, it's very important to separate these things out.
Okay, thank you,
Sorry.
Angela. Sorry, 30 seconds is fast.
Yeah.
Candace, you're next.
All right, I got my timer. So first off, I just have to be very upfront. My partner, very supportive partner, Hendrik, has been with me for the whole Democrats Abroad experience and incredibly supportive throughout the way. My job is a contracted PhD researcher. Believe it or not, they pay you to do your PhD in Germany, which is a novel concept. So it allows very flexible working hours and a stable source of income. I stay sane by training for half marathons, and I also play the oboe, and I love Wheel of Fortune.
Thank you, Candace. Ada?
So yes, work, life, finance, and mental health would not be possible without my partner in life and my partner in crime, Emmanuel Ribelay-Deris. I think I knew I hooked a winner when 3 weeks into the relationship, he went with me to the Asia Pacific regional meeting in Taiwan. Yeah, so he's been very supportive, and that's a very important part of how I'm going to manage this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. Next up will be Aaron Cruz.
This is a really good question, one that I've definitely struggled with. I'm a little bit obsessive about where I allocate time. I track where I spend time for the entire day, even to the extent of tracking how much time I spend on things like showering a day using an app called Toggle. And so I can actually tell you exactly how many hours I've spent on DA and work and everything for the last 6 months or so. So one of the things for me that, for that balance is, frankly, I don't have a great balance between work and DA. If it's not work, it's DA. And I guess the only reason why that's sustainable is I don't have children. I am,
Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to say a quick shout out. I just want to give a shout out to my partner as well. It was our 5-year anniversary yesterday, and she let me spend a bunch of time on DA calls. So thanks for that.
Is David still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I don't know, to me, it's a tremendous opportunity to contribute to supporting building strong government. And just was a real pleasure. I definitely try to maintain a good balance between work and home life and preserving mental health. So it's something I've always done. I've always been very engaged in politics, either through work or through personal activities. And I look forward to continue doing it. And yeah, so far I've managed it pretty well.
All right. Thank you, David. Art?
Yeah, the 5-second answer is it ain't easy. As Angela suggested, I've got a big red chair over here in my living room I'm pointing to that functions as my office, my dining room, my DA fundraising committee central headquarters, and everything else over the last year. The only other thing I'll say about the work I don't know, please don't repeat this to my boss, but I'm at an age where I might be transitioning out of full-time work there. So hopefully things will free up, and that's regardless of the outcome of this election. That's a separate thing.
Thank you, Art.
Sure, you're welcome.
Okay, all of our treasurer and secretary candidates have stepped off the call. Sally, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you have 30 seconds.
I don't even know why anyone's asking this question to a woman. A woman spends her life balancing everything. I've been a full-time lawyer. I have a child who's grown up and moved out, thank God, and a full-time husband. I balance everything. I've never had a problem with it, and I don't anticipate having a problem with it. And unlike Art and the others, I am semi-retired. So, and I do, I think, multitask a lot. Which is why it takes me a second to get my video back on and my microphone back on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Next up is Josh.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is a very, very important question. You know, during the pandemic, they say that we're working from home, but the flip side is we're living at work, right? So I think that it's important to just do what we love. And in my case, my day job is international development. I love it. I'm vice chair of our employee union, which I'm insanely passionate about, and Democrats Abroad. Those are kind of my three loves in life. My wife and daughter are huge supports. Today is actually my daughter's 2nd birthday, so I'm going to be leaving this call to go to a toddler's birthday party. In my case, keeping my mental health is based on doing what I love, and I think that's for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Sorry, it's so fast, 30 seconds. And last but not least, at the end of the alphabet is Orlando.
All I can tell you is that you can only do the best you can, and you can't get it all right every day. Some days you'll prioritize some things, some other days you'll prioritize some other things, but hopefully everything, you know, evens out so that you're giving equally to everybody and meeting all your obligations. It's not easy, like Art said, not easy.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Orlando. Thank you, everybody, for those answers. Next in the queue is Miguel.
Hello, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. It's morning here in Costa Rica. So it's nice to see all of you and get to meet all of you. I've heard of some names, but I've never matched names to faces. And I have a question for the people who are running for chair. Do you have a running, quote unquote, running mate? I'd like to know if you're running with somebody, or if you're not running with anybody. I just like to know. That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. We will let Ada go first.
Yes, thanks for your question, Miguel. Good to see you. I'm running with Aaron Cruz as my vice chair. Thank you.
Candace?
Thank you, Miguel. This is a really important question, and a question that I myself, to be perfectly honest, thought a lot about in the past few months. At the end of the day, I did speak to most of the people running for vice chair, had very great conversations with them, and again, made an agreement that we will work with each other with whoever wins. I do also want to emphasize that I did not say I'm only working with this person or that person or running on a slate, because at the end of the day, that's not my decision. That rests in the Dpca voters' hands. I don't view this as a presidential race, right? You're not voting for Joe and Kamala. If I am elected chair, I think that it is in your hands then to see who would best complement my working style, my strengths, my experience in the organization. And there are a lot of factors come into play: regional diversity, racial diversity, socioeconomic status, age. There are a lot of factors to consider, and I am entrusting you to make the best decision for the next International XCOM with those things in mind.
Thanks, Candace. Angela?
I don't have a running mate. I am a flexible and open person, and I feel like I can work with everyone. So whoever wins, I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to say we are at 5 minutes. Ingi, you are next in the queue.
Hello. Hi, I just want to ask about the global caucuses, which have been one of the big success stories in the last couple of years for Democrats abroad. So I'd like to ask the chair candidates how you see the relationship between the global caucuses and the executive committee developing. It seems like it's an exciting period with the caucuses, and I wonder what your thoughts are about that. And it can be very quick if you will, since we're running out of time. Thank you, DA Switzerland, for hosting this too.
Thank you. Candace, you can go first.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Inga. And yeah, I'm glad that we're getting to caucuses, unfortunately a little late, but thank you. I think that we've hit on this point many times throughout the call, which is that Democrats abroad has expanded really exponentially in the past few years. And now it's time for us to look at how can our structures keep up with this growth. Many of the caucuses, 5 of the 8 caucuses are recently formed. Global Women's Caucus, Black Caucus and Global Youth Caucus and LGBT Caucus are 3 oldest ones, but we have 5 new ones right now. And so the question is, what happens both at the situation with Democrats abroad overall and with their development? A few things that I would like to introduce, again, looking at how caucuses interact with the country level specifically and with the global XCOM. I believe that the leaders who are working in these caucus positions, first of all, should be recognized. There's an incredible amount of work that is going into this process, and we look at the trajectory of how they should mature. Our caucuses are at a size now where elections should be held, where we should be running, making that a more democratic process and a participatory process in how our caucus leaders are chosen. In turn, as elected people, they would then have a vote within the larger body. So that is part of my plan for the next few years as to where we can expect caucuses to go, specifically in relation to the international XCOM and with the body overall of the DPCA.
Thanks, Candace. Angela?
Well, we've established a great team of leaders in our global caucuses. And the way that we're right now, of course, we don't have a vote in the DPCA, but I am not entirely sure that holding a global election for a caucus chair would be productive. But it's something that if the other global caucus leaders wanted to sit down and discuss and work out a plan to do this, I'm more than willing to do it.
Thank you. Ada?
Yeah, so France actually has 5 caucuses already at the country committee level, and was in fact the point of origin for the first caucus of Democrats abroad, which was the Women's Caucus. So, and they all have XCOM votes on our XCOM. I'm open to the idea of direct elections, but I think that it is a thing that you have to think about the purpose and what that effect that has. But I think the more important thing regarding global caucuses is right now what's happening with this amazing flourishing of the global caucuses is we do see a lot of all the caucuses trying to be in the same space. And we have one kind of global email channel, and it's kind of reaching down, you know, we don't have a schedule exactly. I mean, I know they try to schedule it, they try to space it out, but then we also have global events. And what's happening is it's bypassing the country committee messaging, and country committees are not able to kind of catch up. We also have a lot of events where maybe it's the same 500 people going to all the events as opposed to 5,000 people that we're reaching 10 times, right? So that's a thing that we need to have better analytics to see who's participating. We also need to I think we need to focus the pace so that the caucuses can really each bring, with a bit of space, the thing that they do best. I think that caucuses hold the critical conversations that we need to be having as Democrats. I think they need to focus our focus.
We're at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
We're at 7 o'clock.
Anyway,
I have to maintain the time. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming today, all the candidates and the attendees. Thanks for the thoughtful questions and the thoughtful answers. And we will get the video posted online within the day. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good evening.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks for all your work, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
My pleasure.
Very much. No, sorry, I'm going on. I'm taking my extra 43 seconds wherever
Okay,
I can
that's
get them.
fine. Now
Wherever
you
I can get them. Now I can